What's up everybody, Manny from Motomillion here, and as you can see, I'm out riding the Motomillion Streetfighter V4. You may have seen this bike on our previous videos where we've done some installation videos and also the walk around of this beautiful bike. Today I'm going to actually go on a ride and take you to a pretty cool place in Miami called the Marine Stadium. Just wanted to take this bike out for a ride since we just completed the bike and give you my thoughts about this beautiful machine. Also in the process, I'll get to show you some cool areas of Miami which some of you guys may find entertaining to watch. One of the main things that you realize with this bike right now is I like to upgrade the stuff that you touch and feel. As you can see, this is really cleaned up. If you've probably seen it from the walk around video, in terms of stuff that matters when you ride, like the mirrors, the stock mirrors on the Streetfighter were pretty much no good for me because all I would see would be my own shoulders in the mirror. And with these CRG Aero mirrors, you can see clearly behind you now. The only drawback is if you actually lane split, it does make the bike quite wide. Also mentioning the controls, the braking on this bike is so nice. It's just wonderful, you know, the master cylinder that's on there. The Brembo RCS gives that great feel that you want, because the calipers are actually the stock calipers, the Stylemas, which are pretty good calipers. And it's not only me who says this. A couple of racer guys that I know really like these calipers. They use it on some of their race bikes, and for the cost they're great. Another thing that's been changed on the brakes of this bike is the T-drive rotors. So believe it or not, a lot of people don't think about this, but when you change your rotors, because you're changing the material of the steel that's on it, it does make a difference on the feel of the braking and how the pad bites. And if you do the bedding procedure right, these T-drive rotors are amazing. With the pads that come stock on the Brembos, it just gives it that really direct feeling that I like, that it's really confidence inspiring. And that's also what I like to have, because you know, when you go for the brakes, you want to make sure that the brakes are there and it grips right there. Now that the fans kicked in and we're stopped, let's talk about the elephant in the room, that being the Ducatis being hot. Right now it's saying it's 95 degrees outside, beautiful sunny hot day in Miami. This bike doesn't particularly feel that hot, you know. I'm fully geared. One of the main issues was the Panigale V4. The seat does get really hot, but on this Streetfighter V4, the seat's not hot at all. It might be the different subframes that these bikes have. I even have the covers on the side of the engine. I don't know if you can see it. Those have been taken off just because I like to see the beautiful engine that this bike has. Those heat shield covers kind of cover those. But obviously I'm not going to ride in shorts. I'm running my Kevlar pants, and it does insulate the heat quite well. When the fan kicks in, yes, you do feel a little bit of heat on your ankles, but I got my riding boots on, so it's going to be hot regardless. But you know, in terms of the heat, it's not too bad. This bike obviously has a different exhaust on it. We have that beautiful Tormignone Racing slip-on, which you could hear. Also that dry clutch that everyone loves. But maybe the heat issues are kind of different than what a stock one would be, since the catalytic converter is not there. So maybe the heat is a little lower because of that slip-on exhaust that gets rid of the big muffler box that can get really hot. Typical Miami traffic where everyone's just trying to butt in. Let's make it right here. Let's go through Wynwood. This is basically the art district where you'll see a lot of graffiti on the walls. We're just going to pass through though. Just want to take maybe a route that has a little less traffic. But yeah, so it doesn't run that hot. It's 95 degrees or 93 right now, it says, now that we're moving. The heat issue is not too bad. And I want to say, those that complain on the Streetfighter V4, maybe they should grow a pair so they don't have to worry about the heat. We talked about the exhaust. Obviously the soundtrack is amazing, you know. These bikes, doesn't matter if you get the Aero exhaust or the Krapovich or the Terminoni like this one. Once those DB killers are removed, it's just a fabulous, beautiful Ducati V4 sound. It does sound quite a bit like the MotoGP bikes. If you've ever been to a GP race, yes, they're very loud, but this you have the reminiscence of the noise that those MotoGP machines make. And the other noise you're hearing is a dry clutch. It's a very debated topic, and everyone has an opinion on them. And to me, I think a Ducati's got to have a dry clutch, because I grew up in an era where the Ducatis all used to come with a dry clutch, and that was something very distinctive about the Ducatis. And me being me, a kid that loves machines of all types, I particularly loved the Ducatis when it came to motorcycles. And that sound, the dry clutch sound, is just embedded in my mind, I guess, that it bring those memories back. That makes this much more enjoyable. And let's face it, you know, most of us, 90% of the people, you know, we're not reaching the capabilities of these bikes that they can, especially not on the road. And I'm not one of those guys that have something to prove, especially in Miami where the roads are all straight. You'll see that there's no turns, and that I don't have to get rid of my chicken strips on the street. I could do that on my track bikes, but on the street bike, you know, this is the enjoyable part. Just go around and let off some steam and enjoy the beautiful weather we have and the scenery. But at the end of the day, it's all about having an experience with these bikes, and that's why to me that dry clutch is the experience that adds to that experience. Just like I said in the beginning of the video, the stuff that I touch and feel that I like to change, because you know, this is a moment that you're having on a motorcycle, and I don't use it to commute, and I don't know many people that use it to commute, but you could very well do it on this bike, because this is you know, it's a very comfortable bike. The seating position is great. I don't know about gas mileage, because I never check my gas mileage and stuff, and some people do complain, but at the end of the day, how bad could it be, you know? I think last time I checked on this, it was something around 30 miles a gallon, which is, you know, that's pretty good, but I don't know what people expect from a motorcycle, especially something that's over 200 horsepower. But you could commute on these things, but I think most of the people that I talk to that have these things, we use these to get away from our lives and have fun on them, and I think this is the perfect bike for that. I do love the Panigale V4, but in terms of, you know, without compromising anything, you could ride this bike. And for this type of riding that I'm doing, you know, I'm just around town. Let's just say that I'm bumming around town. There's nothing better than this bike, at least that I've experienced. Before the Streetfighter V4 was released, the Aprilia Tuono was I think one of the best bikes that you could buy. But the minute that they released the Streetfighter V4, the Tuono was obsolete for me. And obviously this bike is far from stock. And one thing you notice is it does not have the electronic suspension, nor does it have the Showa forks that it comes with from the factory. And when you're riding it, at least with the settings that it has on it right now, that the way that we set it up, it's a little stiff. But, you know, it's not unbearable. It's not jaw-crushingly stiff that, you know, you're going to have a bad time when you're riding it. But it does, if you ride some of the other bikes back to back, you notice it. It's not uncomfortable, but that's one thing that you notice, especially it has a TTX GP rear shock on it and these custom Öhlins front forks. the sound of this thing though. It is intoxicating. So one of my pet peeves with this bike is actually the quick shifter. When you're full throttle and just sending it, the quick shifter kinda lets you down. Even the gears of third and fourth or fourth or fifth, if you're lazy shifting where you're not being really hard on that shifter, it does hit some false neutrals, which is an issue that a lot of people report on the Streetfighter V4 and the Panigale V4. But when you're riding around town, that quick shifter works perfectly, you know. It shifts every time. Just one thing is, if people are not used to it, the gear lever on your foot is a little sensitive. So if you're riding, let's say this, and you don't shift but you touch it, you see it just cut out there. It does that. If you lazy shift, you see it did it again. That's me just being really soft on that shifter. So some people, when they first get this bike and they're not being careful where their foot is, and maybe you get on the throttle, you hit a dip and you touch that shifter a little bit, it'll cut out like that, and they kind of get worried that there's something wrong with the bike. It's just the nature of the quick shifter. But to be honest, other than the quick shifter, I've ridden this, you know, in the stock form and now in the finish form for this has about 1,000 miles on it right now that I put them all on myself. There's not much to complain about, you know. It's at least for this type of riding. But even I could imagine if we had curvier roads and canyons to carve, I bet you the handling is not going to be something that I would complain about, or probably the handling limits is not something that I could reach. And it has all the electronics in the world that you could want to keep you safe, as long as you're not being stupid on it. And this is how far these bikes have come, that I know I'm going to get a lot of comments on this maybe, but you know, if you're a novice rider, if you have a little bit of sense of respect and you don't fool around with these machines, you know, you could start riding on a Streetfighter V4, as long as, you know, obviously you know how to drive a manual car, that you know how to operate that clutch, and it translates the same way on a motorcycle. You could start riding this bike. But again, it's you know, it comes with maturity. You have to respect this bike, because it has a lot of power, and you could get yourself into a lot of trouble if you were being careless and reckless on it. It's the only curve we have so far. But, you know, we're in the middle of the city. We're not going to do anything here, but we're in the school zone, so let's tame it down a little bit. You know, I once was a kid that used to look at the bikes that drove by, and I'm sure if you ride or if you have a nice car, you see the smile on the kids' faces when they see stuff like this, especially something that's loud like this. You know, it gets their attention, and I always wonder if they'll grow up to get a bike or love bikes or cars, you know. Just looking around this bike right now, just that we're stopped, man, there's a lot of carbon on it. It's kind of cool. Like I said, I do enjoy these things a lot. You know, I'm a huge car guy, huge motorcycle guy. I get a kick out of it when I just take this for a ride and I look down. You know, we got the Pro-Type bowl, it's the Öhlins damper and the Öhlins fork in the front, and all these MotoGP inspired buttons. You know, it's a beautiful thing to look at, and hey, you could ride it around and have fun on it, a lot of fun on it. Speaking of MotoGP, one thing that's cool is, you know, when you get a motorcycle like this, there's a lot of heritage that comes with it. And I've been following racing as long as I can remember. That Rossi was on a 125cc bike, and you know, Mick Doohan was the world champion. Max Biaggi and Rossi were having fights with each other. And yeah, Ducati wasn't doing so well until some of the other guys got on it. Rossi didn't do well on it, but now Man, if you follow MotoGP, Ducati is the bike to beat. Yeah, I know Fabio Quartararo is crazy. He's an alien. He's taking that Yamaha to its limits, but the Ducatis are fast bikes, and when you ride a Ducati, at least for me, that kind of matters, you know. It's that brand name that is doing so well in MotoGP and in other forms of motorcycling motorsports. And the technology from those things trickle down. You know, if you've ever watched any of these presentations of Ducati when the V4 engine came out, they pulled that up and said, you know, it's almost a MotoGP engine, and if you put a cutaway of a MotoGP engine and this engine, it's so alike. And you get that, you know, it kind of sticks with you too, that you watch these things, you hear those bikes, and you're riding a product that's made by Ducati, that's winning races, getting on podiums. It all adds to that. It all adds to the ride, it all adds to the fun you have on it. It's like being a kid. You know, you used to go around on your bicycle when you were a kid, make some jumps and do some stuff. I remember I used to take these plastic bottles that I used to squish between the wheels and the spokes, so that when I got faster and faster, it sounded like it was actually a motorcycle. And you know, now I'm just doing it on a real bike. A little bit of dry clay sound for you haters. So we're in the Brickell area, which is the financial district. This is the ends of it, but the ocean's on our left. We're going to go up ahead and go over Biscayne Bay. And I gotta pinch myself sometimes, you know. I'm not a Miami native. I moved here around 6 years ago, full time. I used to just come here during winter because I was a track bum. I used to race cars and instruct, but I used to live in Canada, and there was winter, and winter everything freezes over, there's no racing, and I used to just come down to Miami and be a snowbird. But now I live here, it's amazing. Now I'm going to show you why I gotta pinch myself sometimes, because the view over that bridge is crazy. These weren't such readily available things just a couple years ago. I remember inquiring with companies to make them for street bikes, you know, so that they have the headlight, horn, turn signals, and because they had them for the racing bikes for a long time, and they finally made it. I was so happy, because you're looking down, you're seeing this. Again, it looks like a MotoGP bike or a World Superbike. Just look at this beautiful view. They're technically on top of the ocean and on Biscayne Bay, and you feel it. It's a lot cooler. At least the breeze from the ocean that you get. I'm there in a Dainese perforated jacket, and this cool breeze is really appreciated this time. For someone who is going to do the same type of riding in the city, you know, you just want to go and enjoy yourself, and maybe wake up on the weekend and just go for a nice ride, even if you don't have any crazy canyons or curvy roads, and you know, you want to stay alive and not do stupid things on the road going 200 miles an hour. You'll have a lot of fun with this bike, especially if you have scenery like this, that, you know, you're just chilling, enjoying the beautiful Italian opera that this Ducati sings, and looking over and seeing the ocean and the water and the islands and the bridges, and it never gets old. I don't know if you hear my voice juddering a little bit. This bridge is not the smoothest road, so the suspension, yeah, it's a little stiff, but then again, you have your compression and rebound settings on top of these forks that you could just adjust. And don't forget, we get this question a lot: oh my god, why did you not buy a V4S? It has electronic suspension and you still put Öhlins on it. None of the top Ducati bikes come with electronic suspension, and there's a reason for that. The manual setup is still better than the electronic suspension, given that it has the proper internals to deal with what a suspension has to deal with. The top of the line mechanical suspension is still better than an electronic suspension, and it's all because of consistency. So the electronic suspension works with obviously electricity, and there's a current that goes to the valves that open and close those valves, and there's computers that compute everything. And what happens is, so the reaction that the computer wants is sent to that shock valve or the fork valve by a current, and that dictates how much that valve opens and closes and what it does. But unfortunately, the electronics are not sophisticated enough yet that it's not consistent. So if you take it to, you know, if you give it to a MotoGP rider, he's obviously going to say yes, it's a great bike out of the box, because imagine, you know, the bikes 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, they're not even close to the bikes that we're getting now. But if you put a good suspension on it, it makes a big difference on the handling and on the ride at the limit, obviously. You know, for street riding, you could call this all flex, I guess, right? But hey, like I said, if you like enjoying having the best of the best and you want to have nice things, I don't know, it doesn't get much nicer than this, at least in terms of, you know, something that's not crazy expensive, and something that, yeah, it is expensive. This bike, when we calculated on the video, was $51,000 in change. It's a lot of money for a motorcycle, but hey, it's not unattainable, right? It's not $1 million or even $100,000. And imagine you go buy a Superleggera for 100 grand. I could still put more than half this stuff on a Superleggera and get that price going up. So here's the spot that I was talking to you guys about. This is the Marine Stadium. I guess it's closed off. This place used to be, well, it still is here, but this was the first purpose-built water sports stadium in the United States, and it still is the only one. It was built in 60s. And unfortunately, after the 1992, I think it was 92, correct me if I'm wrong, but Hurricane Andrew that hit Miami, this structure was deemed unsafe by the city, and it's been left its own demise over here. Recently, there's been news that there's funding for it to clean it up and get it back up to code, and structurally as well, to get it back to its original strength so that they could use it for events and everything. Let me show you around. Even though they have the funding for it, they're fighting the city, or the city is fighting the people that want it done. The city is saying that the return on investment is not there, so now they're doing all kinds of studies as of this video to see if it's feasible to bring this piece of brutal architecture back to life, and hopefully they do. I think the view here is amazing. You see the Miami skyline in the back, and I wish we could go in there, but obviously since it's deemed unsafe, it's cordoned off, and there's some sort of an event that was going on here. Now the view on the stands, I've watched a couple of videos and looked at some pictures of this thing. It's just amazing. But this is a really nice place, and all the graffiti actually looks cool too, you know. But they've cordoned it off even more that we can't even get near it, so I can't show you much. But hey, this is the Marine Stadium, and that was a quick little history about it. I'm just gonna pull off over here, guys, and cool off for a little bit, enjoy the scenery, maybe grab some water from the store that's there, and I'll get back on the bike and we'll continue this ride. I'm sure you guys have, maybe you guys have seen some videos of this bike, but this is just gorgeous, you know, walking back to it and seeing all the carbon shine in the sun and the details that the bike has. It's just amazing. If you want to see more of the bike itself and want information on it, just check out our other videos, because we did a thorough walk around and a breakdown of this bike, of what it has and how much it costs. But let's get back on the road and let's head back before the traffic. Can't get better than this. Yeah, it is a little warm, but you know, winters are the nicer months here. But even for now, it's September, beginning of September. The weather's really nice. It's not so humid as it usually is in the summer in these months. And these things over here, in case you guys don't know, those are marinas that they store your boat on racks so that it doesn't stay in the water, because if you leave it in the salt water, there's all sorts of corrosion and stuff that build up under the boats. That you could just store your boat on a rack. You call them, they put them in the water, and you go enjoy your boat, and you come back and they'll put it back on your rack. But this is the beautiful skyline view. In that area you see over there, that's the financial district called Brickell. It has a pretty cool history, and if any of you have watched the documentary called Cocaine Cowboys and the series of those that have come out, this might not look like the skyline they showed, because there's a lot of new buildings that have come up over the years, but that is the place. And maybe on the next ride video, I'll take you guys there to show around Brickell and tell you guys a little bit about the whole history of Brickell. But speaking of other rides, we plan on making some more content like this for you guys. I don't know if you guys enjoy this kind of content or not, just to, I think of, you know, hey, I got access to all these cool bikes, and why not just take him out for a ride and show you guys around Miami. I could take you guys around and show you the cool spots, and that way I have an excuse to use these beautiful machines. Speaking of these beautiful machines that I have access to, we got a couple bikes incoming that I think you guys will really enjoy. One of them is the Ducati Panigale V4 SP2 that I've had on order before it was publicly released, and it was supposed to be here. Supply chain issues and everything has been pushed back to October, at least that's what my dealer said. And I've had an R1M on order for the longest time. I think this was supposed to be here in April, but again, a lot of issues and COVID and stuff going on in Japan that it's been delayed. It went from April to July, and hopefully, fingers crossed, they said that the R1M should be here very, very soon. I hope to have it in the next couple of weeks, and I have a lot of plans. For the SP2, the Panigale V4 SP2, I haven't given much thought, but for the R1M, I have a pretty good idea what we're going to do with it. There's some crazy things that I already have waiting for the bike. We're going to do a full custom paint job on it, and I have secured a World Superbike exhaust from Akropovich, a full titanium exhaust. And believe it or not, it's a lot different than the consumer models, the Evolution models that we could usually get. The piping is much bigger, which means usually with a proper tune, it's going to make a lot more power. And I'm already working on it to do some sort of a custom muffler, because the World Superbike muffler for it is quite big. But that's in the works, and you know, the SP2 is going to be here. I can't wait for that. It's not that changed, you know, from an older SP or the Panigale V4 architecture to begin with. It's a lot of electronic changes and stuff that makes it more rideable. But that R1M, it's one of my favorite bikes. And getting back to the Street Fighter, we're on the highway doing highway speeds. You know, I'm not going to say that I'll go take a long distance trip with this, go, you know, touring with it. But the wind is not too bad, you know. It's yeah, we don't have a windscreen up front to protect me from the wind, but you know, at these speeds, just getting around town, you know, maybe going from one end of town to the other end of town and on the highway, it's pretty acceptable. If you do this for a long time, maybe it's going to beat down on you and get pretty tiring to have all this wind hit you, but and you know, every rose has its thorn. As beautiful as Miami is, the traffic is pretty bad. And it's what, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the rush hour traffic's already started. I'm gonna get off this highway now. But yeah, all in all, this is my ride review, guys. You know, an urban ride review, let's call it. I'm not going to come and give you guys a review on how this thing handles, because let's face it, on an urban setting, I might look pretty foolish trying to give you guys a review on how the bike handles. But you know, for a desirable object that it is, and for a toy, I don't think it gets much better than this. And if you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. If there's any places you want me to visit in Miami that you want to see, let me know. You know, I'll gladly take a ride, especially since this bike is for sale and it's not going to be around for a long time. I want to enjoy it as much as I can, so let me know where to go, and when the other bikes arrive, I'll take those ones out for a ride. But until then, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you guys like this new video, and have a good one.